In the year 1119, the world was still trembling from the First Crusade. Christian knights had captured Jerusalem, but the roads leading to the Holy City were dangerous. Pilgrims who risked the journey were robbed, beaten, and often killed. Amid this chaos, a French nobleman named Auguste de Pins gathered 8 fellow knights. They took a sacred oath to protect travelers on the road and to defend the Holy Land with their lives. They had no army, no wealth, and no fortresses, just faith and their swords. They called themselves the poor fellow soldiers of Christ. To outsiders, they were nothing more than a handful of ragged warriors. Yet these 9 men would lay the foundation for one of the most powerful, feared, and mysterious orders in history, the Knights Templar.
When Hugues de Payens and his brothers first formed their order, they had little more than their weapons and their faith. But within a few years, something extraordinary happened. King Baldwin II of Jerusalem saw their devotion and granted them a headquarters unlike any other, a wing of the royal palace built on the ancient Temple Mount. This was no ordinary residence. It stood on the very site of the Temple of Solomon, the holiest of Jewish shrines, destroyed centuries earlier, yet still echoing with biblical legend. For the knights, this was a gift from heaven. For others, it was a sign of destiny. From that moment, they became known as the Knights of the Temple, the Knights Templar. Their name tied them forever to the most sacred ground in Jerusalem. But living on the Temple Mount came with whispers. What were these 9 knights doing in the dark vaults beneath the ruins? Some say they were guarding the holy site. Others claim they were digging, searching, uncovering something hidden beneath the stones. Was it treasure, ancient scrolls, or even the Ark of the Covenant itself? Whatever the truth, the Templars emerged from their years on the Temple Mount changed. They carried with them not only a new name, but also a new aura of mystery and power, one that would grow with every passing year.
At first, the Templars were just a small band of warrior monks, but their fate changed forever in 1129. At the Council of Troyes, the Catholic Church gave the order its blessing. Pope Honorius II, guided by the influence of the powerful abbot Bernard of Clairvaux, recognized the Templars as a holy order directly under the authority of the Church. This papal seal transformed them overnight. No longer just a group of knights, they were now the Pope's own soldiers, answerable to no king, no noble, no earthly power, only the Church itself. With papal protection, donations began to flood in. Noble families gave land, money, and sons to the Templars. Kings granted them privileges. Their numbers grew, their wealth multiplied, and their reputation spread like wildfire. What began as 9 poor knights had suddenly become an institution backed by the most powerful force in medieval Europe, the Church of Rome.
But power alone wasn't enough. The Templars needed discipline, a way of life that set them apart from every other knightly order. That's when Bernard of Clairvaux, the most influential churchman of his age, stepped in. He crafted the Templar rule, a code of conduct that blended the austerity of monks with the ferocity of warriors. Templars swore vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. They wore simple clothes, slept side by side in communal halls, and ate humble meals. No luxury, no personal possessions, no vanity. They were forbidden to hunt, forbidden to gamble, forbidden to even speak too much at meals. Their lives were one of silence, prayer, and service. Yet unlike monks, they were also warriors. Their swords were blessed, their battles considered holy. To fight and die as a Templar was not only an honor, it was a direct path to salvation. They believed God Himself guided their blades in battle. With Bernard's rule, the Templars became more than knights. They became an army of God.
They had begun as the poor fellow soldiers of Christ, but poverty soon became an illusion. As their reputation grew, so did their wealth. Nobles eager to support the Holy Order gave them vast estates across Europe. Castles, villages, farms, and vineyards all fell under Templar control. Yet it wasn't just land. The Templars pioneered something new, a system of safe financial exchange. Pilgrims could deposit money at a Templar preceptory in Europe, then withdraw funds safely in the Holy Land. In time, this became the foundation of one of the earliest forms of banking. Knights who had once begged for food were now managing treasuries for kings. They lent money to monarchs, financed crusades, and guarded fortunes. Their power was no longer only military, it was economic. And with wealth came influence, and with influence came suspicion. The poor knights were quickly becoming too rich, too independent, and too powerful for comfort.
Every great order has its symbol, and for the Knights Templar, it was the Red Cross. Simple, stark, and unforgettable. Sewn onto their white mantles, it was more than decoration. It was a statement, white for purity, red for the blood of Christ. To wear the cross meant something extraordinary. It was not just a badge of honor, but a symbol of sacrifice. A Templar swore to fight without fear, never to retreat unless outnumbered 3-1, and to lay down his life if necessary. When enemies saw the white cloaks and crimson cross charging across the battlefield, they did not just see warriors, they saw men ready to die. But the cross was also psychological warfare. It reminded allies that the Templars fought for God, and it reminded enemies that they faced not ordinary men, but holy knights who believed heaven itself was on their side. For pilgrims, the Red Cross was a beacon of safety. For infidels, it was a mark of terror. And as the years passed, this symbol would become one of the most recognizable and feared emblems in the entire medieval world.
Behind the battlefield glory, the life of a Templar was far from glamorous. These warrior monks lived under a strict code, one that governed everything from how they prayed to how they slept. Every day was carefully structured: dawn prayers, mass, training, meals in silence, more prayers, and rest. Their diet was plain, mostly bread, vegetables, and meat on special occasions. They drank wine only in moderation, and even at the table, talking was forbidden unless absolutely necessary. The meals themselves were treated as a form of worship. Templars slept fully clothed, ready at a moment's notice to rise and defend their brothers. They owned almost nothing: no personal wealth, no extravagant clothing, no luxury items. Every knight was provided with the same simple gear: a sword, a lance, a horse, and of course, the white mantle with the red cross. Their discipline was iron. They were forbidden to retreat in battle unless hopelessly outnumbered. They were forbidden to hunt for sport, to gamble, to swear, or to even engage in idle chatter. A Templar's life was not his own. It belonged to God and to the Order. Yet despite these restrictions, men from across Europe rushed to join. Why? Because to wear the mantle of the temple was to rise above the ordinary. It was to live as both monk and knight, and to fight not for land or king, but for God himself. The Templar life was harsh, but it offered something no crown could give: eternal salvation.
For years, the Templars trained, prayed, and guarded pilgrims. But soon they would face their true test: war. The Holy Land was under constant threat.
Muslim armies sought to reclaim what the Crusaders had taken, and the fragile kingdom of Jerusalem depended on every sword. The Templars answered the call. Clad in their white mantles, they rode at the head of armies, fearless in the face of death. Unlike ordinary knights, they did not fight for plunder or glory. They fought with the ferocity of men who believed heaven awaited them on the battlefield. Chroniclers wrote that the Templars never broke ranks, never fled, and never abandoned their brothers. In battle, they were the first to charge and the last to retreat. Their discipline, combined with their faith, made them a force unlike any other in the Crusader states. In time, their reputation spread across both Christendom and Islam. To Christians, they were holy warriors, God's chosen defenders. To their enemies, they were fanatics who would rather die than surrender. For the Templars, every clash of steel was more than a fight for land. It was a war for eternity itself. With blood spilled and victories won, the Templars had proven themselves. The order was no longer a humble brotherhood of 9 knights. It was now an unstoppable military machine, feared on both sides of the battlefield.
As the Crusader states expanded, so too did the responsibilities of the Templars. They were not only knights, they became builders of some of the most formidable fortresses the medieval world had ever seen. Across the Holy Land, their castles rose like mountains of stone, guarding roads, trade routes, and holy sites. Among their strongholds was the mighty fortress of Cepheid, perched high above Galilee. Another was Adlet, whose walls reached straight into the sea. Each castle was an engineering marvel. Thick stone walls, hidden passages, deep wells to withstand sieges, and towers from which a handful of knights could hold off thousands. But these were not ordinary castles. To the Templars, they were sanctuaries. Chapels stood at the heart of every fortress, and relics were enshrined in their halls. Pilgrims could find shelter inside, while enemy armies often broke themselves against the unyielding walls. It was said that in times of war, the Templars would light beacons on their towers, signaling across vast distances, creating a chain of fire that connected fortress to fortress. The land itself seemed to glow with the cross of the temple. Each castle was more than stone. It was a message. The Knights Templar were not just passing through the Holy Land. They intended to stay. And for a time, it seemed nothing could drive them out.
When the Templars first settled on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, their mission seemed clear: protect pilgrims, guard the holy city. But whispers spread quickly. What were they really doing beneath the ancient ruins of Solomon's Temple? For nearly a decade, the Knights lived above the sacred site. Some chronicles suggest they spent much of that time tunneling, digging through the old foundations. The question is, why? Some say they searched for treasure left behind by King Solomon, golden vessels, sacred relics, or the fabled Ark of the Covenant itself. Others whisper of scrolls, ancient writings that revealed forbidden knowledge, secrets that could shake the very foundations of the Church. There are even tales that they uncovered relics of Christ, fragments of the true cross, or perhaps even the Holy Grail. No records survived to tell us the truth, but something did change. After their years on the Temple Mount, the Templars emerged transformed. Their influence exploded, their wealth multiplied, and their order rose from obscurity to international power almost overnight. Was it divine favor or something hidden, unearthed beneath the stones of Solomon's Temple? The world may never know, but the legend of those secret excavations has haunted the order for centuries. As their fame grew, the Templars expanded far beyond Jerusalem. Soon,
They were not just defending the Holy Land. They had outposts across Europe. In France, Spain, England, Portugal, and beyond, Templar commanderies sprang up like seeds of an empire. Each house trained new recruits, raised funds, and supplied the war effort overseas. For the first time, Christendom had something extraordinary, an international military order, loyal not to kings, but to God and the Pope. They could move men, money, and messages across borders faster than any monarch. In an age divided by rival kingdoms, the Templars were one of the few forces that truly united Europe under a single banner.
But war alone does not sustain an army. The Templars had stumbled onto something greater: finance. Pilgrims setting out for the Holy Land could deposit money at a Templar commandery in Europe, then withdraw it in Jerusalem. No need to carry gold across dangerous roads. This system made travel safer, and it made the Templars indispensable. Soon, nobles entrusted them with estates. Kings borrowed money from them. The Pope himself relied on their financial skill. The Templars were no longer just warriors in armor. They were bankers, accountants, and moneylenders on a scale the medieval world had never seen. Some whispered that the Templars had become richer than any king, and with money came influence. Influence that made friends and enemies.
Yet for all their wealth and politics, the Templars never forgot their purpose: war. On the battlefield, they became legendary. Clad in white, they charged in tight formation, striking fear into their enemies. Chroniclers wrote that even when outnumbered, they fought to the last man, believing death was not defeat, but a doorway to heaven. One rule set them apart from ordinary knights: a Templar could never ransom himself if captured. While noble knights might be traded for gold, a Templar was expected to accept martyrdom. This fanatic devotion made them both admired and feared, an unstoppable force that seemed to fight with divine fury.
But the Templars' rise brought them powerful enemies. Muslim chroniclers called them the fiercest of the Franks, and rulers like Saladin came to respect and despise their unshakable resolve. Time and again, the Templars stood at the front lines, their blood soaking the sands of the Holy Land. Even within Christendom, envy grew. Kings owed them money, nobles resented their privileges, and rival orders, like the Knights Hospitaller, competed with them for glory. Wherever the Templars went, they inspired loyalty, but also jealousy and suspicion.
For decades, the Templars seemed untouchable. But history is never kind to those who grow too powerful. The Crusader kingdoms began to weaken. Strong Muslim leaders united, while the Christians quarreled. Castles fell, armies were slaughtered, and one by one, the Templars were forced to retreat. At the same time, back in Europe, whispers spread. People asked, why were these monks so rich? Why did they answer only to the Pope? And what had they found beneath the Temple of Solomon? The Templars, once heroes, were slowly becoming a mystery that frightened even their allies. The stage was set. Their golden age was nearing its end, and the shadows of betrayal were gathering. In the mid-12th century, a new leader emerged from the Muslim world, Salah ad-Din, better known as Saladin. Charismatic, brilliant, and deeply pious, he united the fractured Islamic states under one banner. For the first time, the Crusaders faced not scattered warlords, but a single powerful adversary. The Templars stood directly in his path. They fought him in countless skirmishes, their white mantles flashing against his vast armies. Chroniclers tell of brutal clashes, knights riding into waves of enemies, refusing to yield even when surrounded. Yet Saladin was unlike any foe they had faced. He was patient, calculating, and merciless when needed. While kings of Christendom bickered among themselves, Saladin struck with precision. In 1187, his forces delivered a devastating blow at the Battle of Hattin. Surrounded by desert heat, cut off from water, the Crusader army crumbled. Thousands were slaughtered, and the Templars? Most were executed on Saladin's orders, for he considered them too dangerous to live. Jerusalem itself soon fell. For the Templars, the unthinkable had happened. The holy city they had sworn to defend at all costs was gone.
When news spread across Europe that Jerusalem had fallen, shock turned to fury. Pilgrims wept. Kings vowed revenge. The Pope himself called for a new crusade. Yet for the Templars, this was more than a loss of land. It was a spiritual wound. Their very identity was tied to the temple, to the holy city. And now it was in the hands of their enemies. But even in defeat, the Templars refused to break. They retreated to their strongholds along the coast, castles like Tyre and Acre, and held firm. From these fortresses, they launched raids, defended pilgrims, and kept the Crusader states alive when all seemed lost. They became the shield of the Holy Land, battered but unbroken. Still, a question began to haunt Christendom. If God's chosen warriors could lose Jerusalem, had God abandoned them?
The loss of Jerusalem sparked the most famous of all crusades, the Third. 3 kings took the cross: Richard the Lionheart of England, Philip II of France, and Frederick Barbarossa of the Holy Roman Empire. The Templars marched with them, their reputation as the fiercest warriors still intact. On the battlefield, they fought side by side with Richard himself. Chroniclers describe the Templars as his most trusted knights, leading charges, breaking enemy lines, and holding the ground when others faltered. Their discipline became the backbone of the Crusader army. Though Richard never retook Jerusalem, the Templars ensured the survival of the Crusader states along the coast. Without them, the Holy Land might have been lost completely. Their courage cemented their legend, but it also deepened their myth. Were they truly God's chosen knights, or were they men grasping at a destiny that kept slipping away?
By the late 13th century, the Crusader dream was dying. One by one, the Christian outposts in the Holy Land fell. The Templars fought desperately, but the tide had turned. Finally, in 1291, the great fortress city of Acre, the last major Crusader stronghold, came under siege. The assault was merciless. Waves of enemy soldiers stormed the walls. The Templars fought to the last, their white mantles stained with blood. Chroniclers describe scenes of chaos, flames consuming towers, knights cut down in the streets, civilians fleeing to the harbor. When Acre fell, the Crusader kingdom was gone. The Templars who survived sailed back to Europe, broken and weary. For 2 centuries, they had fought for the Holy Land. Now, with Acre lost, their purpose seemed shattered. But back in Europe, they were far from finished. In fact, their story was about to take a darker turn.
With the Holy Land gone, the Templars were knights without a war. They returned to Europe wealthy, powerful, and independent. Their castles still stood, their lands still stretched across the continent, and their coffers were still full. But their mission, their sacred purpose, was gone. To kings drowning in debt, the Templars looked less like holy warriors and more like rivals. To peasants, they looked like lords who lived above the law. And to the church, they were a mystery, an order that had grown too rich, too secretive, too untouchable. Whispers began. What did the Templars do behind closed doors? Why were their initiation rites kept hidden? Why did they answer to no one but the Pope? The knights who had once been hailed as heroes were now seen with suspicion. In the shadows of Europe, rumors of heresy, devil worship, and forbidden knowledge began to spread.
By the dawn of the 14th century, the Knights Templar were at the height of their wealth, yet at the edge of their downfall. Their castles towered across Europe, their treasuries overflowed, and kings themselves owed them fortunes. But power attracts envy, and envy gives birth to whispers. People murmured that the Templars no longer served God, but something darker. Tales spread of secret initiation ceremonies where new recruits were forced to spit upon the cross or to deny Christ. Others claimed that strange idols were hidden in their halls, mysterious heads, grotesque relics, even objects that spoke with voices not of this world. Were these lies sown by enemies who coveted their wealth? Or were they fragments of a truth that the Templars guarded too closely? No one knew, but suspicion was growing, and it was about to be weaponized by a king desperate for power.
In France, King Philip IV, known as Philip the Fair, ruled with ambition but empty coffers. His wars had drained the treasury, and his debts to the Templars weighed heavily upon him. To Philip, the order was both banker and rival, a state within his state, answerable only to the Pope. He needed money and he needed control. And so Philip devised a plan: destroy the Templars, seize their wealth, and eliminate their power forever. But he could not move openly against them without cause. He needed justification, a charge that would turn the world against them. And what better weapon than the whispers of heresy that already haunted their name?
The trap was set. On the night of October 13th, 1307, a Friday, Philip's agents struck. Across France, before dawn, Templar knights were arrested in a single coordinated sweep. Hundreds were dragged from their commanderies, bound in chains, accused of blasphemy, idolatry, and sorcery. The shock was immense. How could the most sacred of orders, blessed by the Pope himself, fall overnight like common criminals? The charges were grotesque: worshipping a demonic head, kissing one another in forbidden rituals, spitting on the cross, and denying Christ in secret oaths. The world gasped. Had the Knights of the Temple truly fallen into darkness, or was this the greatest political betrayal of the Middle Ages?
Under Philip's orders, the arrested Templars were subjected to torture. Men who had once charged fearlessly into battle now faced the rack, the whip, and the fire. Bones cracked, flesh tore, and screams echoed through the dungeons of France. Under this agony, many confessed. They admitted to heresy, to blasphemy, to obscene rituals. But were these confessions truth, or simply the words of broken men desperate to end their suffering? Some knights recanted as soon as they were freed from torture, insisting their words were lies forced from them. Others went to their deaths, still declaring their innocence. The damage, however, was done. The image of the Templars was shattered. Once holy warriors, they were now branded heretics in the eyes of Europe.
At the center of it all stood Jacques de Molay, the last Grand Master of the Templars. Proud, unbending, he refused to betray the order's honor. For 7 years he languished in chains as trials dragged on, as kings and popes debated his fate. Finally, in 1314, the verdict came. On a cold March evening in Paris,
Jacques de Molay was led to the stake. As flames licked the sky, he cried out his final defiance, declaring before the crowd that the Templars were innocent, that their order was holy, and that God would judge their persecutors. Some say he cursed Philip and Pope Clement, prophesying their deaths within a year. And according to chroniclers, both men did indeed die soon after. With de Molay's death, the Order of the Temple was broken, but their legend was only just beginning. For in the ashes of their downfall, mystery and myth took root. The Knights Templar were gone, yet their secrets would live on forever. When the Templars were arrested in 1307, French soldiers stormed their treasuries, but to their astonishment, the vaults were empty. The Order's immense wealth, gold, relics, priceless artifacts had vanished without a trace. Chroniclers say that on the very night before the arrests, a fleet of Templar ships sailed from the port of La Rochelle. Where did they go? Some believe they carried the treasure to Scotland, others to Portugal, where the Templars were later reborn as the Knights of Christ. There are even whispers of voyages across the Atlantic centuries before Columbus. The treasure was never found. Was it gold and jewels, sacred relics, or perhaps something even greater, ancient knowledge unearthed in Jerusalem, hidden forever from the eyes of kings and popes?
Among the many legends entwined with the Templars, none is more enduring than their connection to the Holy Grail. Some say they discovered it beneath the Temple of Solomon, the very cup of Christ, imbued with divine power. Others suggest the Grail was not an object at all, but a secret, knowledge so profound that it could change the world. Templar chapels across Europe often feature strange carvings, knights kneeling before chalices, cryptic symbols that seem to hint at something hidden. Did these warriors of Christ carry the Grail across continents, guarding it in silence? Or is the legend nothing more than myth, born from the romance of a lost order? Whatever the truth, the Grail remains forever linked to the Templars, as if their story is incomplete without it. Among the accusations hurled at the Templars was the worship of a mysterious idol, a head sometimes described as bearded, sometimes female, sometimes monstrous. This name echoed through the trial records, Baphomet. Was Baphomet a demon, as the Inquisitors claimed? Or was it a corruption of the name Muhammad, used to paint the Templars as secret Muslims? Some historians believe the idol may have been a reliquary, perhaps even the preserved head of John the Baptist. Others whisper it was a symbol of secret knowledge, an initiation into mysteries that predated Christianity. The truth was never revealed, but the word Baphomet would echo through history, later adopted by occultists, secret societies, and even Satanists. From the ashes of the Templars, a new legend was born, one darker, stranger, and more forbidden than ever before.
La Rochelle was not the only port linked to Templar ships. Across the Mediterranean, they maintained fleets that moved quietly between strongholds. But when the order was dissolved, those ships were never accounted for. They simply disappeared. In Scotland, rumors tell of Templar vessels arriving in remote shores, carrying knights who swore new oaths beneath the stars. In Portugal, their maritime knowledge helped fuel the age of exploration, guiding sailors beyond the edge of the known world. And some whisper of maps preserved in secrecy that charted lands unknown to medieval Europe. The Lost Fleet became one of the Templars' greatest mysteries, their power expending across oceans, their secrets carried on the waves. Did they fade into history or into legend?
The Pope may have dissolved the Templars, but their story did not end in fire. Across Europe, their brothers vanished into new identities. In Portugal, they became the Knights of Christ with royal blessing. In Spain, some joined the Knights of Calatrava. In Germany, they melted into the Teutonic Order. In Scotland, where papal power was weaker, legends say they found refuge with Robert the Bruce, fighting in secret at the Battle of Bannockburn. The white mantle with the red cross disappeared from the battlefield, but the spirit of the Templars lived on, hidden within new orders, new brotherhoods, and new myths. Some believe their lineage never broke, that even today, secret descendants guard the mysteries they once carried. The world may think them extinct, but their shadow remains, whispering through the corridors of history.
The Templars may have been broken by fire and sword, but their presence never truly vanished. In village taverns, people still whispered of the knights who vanished into the night with carts of treasure. In monasteries, rumors spoke of secret brothers who continued their vows in silence. Across Europe, the Red Cross faded from banners, but it remained etched into memory. The question that haunted kings and commoners alike was simple. Did the Templars die, or did they simply change their name? Some accounts suggest whole commanderies were never attacked, their knights slipping quietly into rural life, blending with other orders. Others hint that documents, rituals, and treasures were hidden in caves, vaults, and chapels, waiting for the right time to emerge. It is in this silence, the century after their downfall, that the legend of the Templars grew most powerful. A brotherhood defeated in public, yet undefeated in spirit, becoming the most famous vanished order in history.
By the 17th and 18th centuries, a new brotherhood was rising in Europe, the Freemasons. Their lodges drew nobles, scholars, and thinkers, men bound by secret symbols, rituals, and oaths. And almost immediately, connections to the Templars began to surface. Freemasons themselves often claimed descent from the Templars, weaving stories that their order had survived through hidden channels, eventually resurfacing under a new name. Some Masonic rites explicitly invoked the Templar legacy, declaring their members heirs of the Knights' lost wisdom. In Scotland, these connections grew strongest, fueled by legends that Templars had fought alongside Robert the Bruce and had preserved their order in secrecy. Were these claims history or invention? Historians argue. But in the public imagination, the link between Templars and Freemasons became unbreakable. One order had died in fire, the other thrived in secrecy, and together they formed a lineage of hidden brotherhoods that still fascinates the world today.
If the Templars guarded knowledge, relics, or treasures unearthed beneath Solomon's temple, where did it all go after their downfall? Some whisper that the Vatican itself holds the key. The arrest of the knights and the papal trials produced vast records, much of which disappeared into the archives of the Church. For centuries, the Vatican has kept these documents locked away, their contents hidden from the world. Were the Templars guilty of heresy or victims of royal greed? Did they discover relics of Christ or texts too dangerous to reveal? Did they truly worship an idol, or was it all a fabrication of King Philip's court? Answers may lie within the papal vaults, but only fragments have ever been made public. The secrecy fuels speculation. To this day, many believe the Vatican still hides the truth, that somewhere in its archives are scrolls, relics, and records that could rewrite history. Perhaps the greatest Templar secret of all was not destroyed, but absorbed, hidden beneath the heart of the Church itself.
Legends do not bind themselves to Europe alone. Some stories claim that the Templars, with their lost fleet, crossed the Atlantic centuries before Columbus. In Nova Scotia, the mysterious site of Oak Island is said to conceal hidden vaults, shafts, tunnels, and stone markers that many link to Templar treasure. Some symbols carved on the island even resemble Templar crosses, fueling belief that the knights buried their secrets there. Others point to strange maps that surfaced in the 15th century, maps that seem to show the Americas before they were discovered. Were these based on ancient knowledge preserved by the Templars? Did their fleet sail west, carrying treasure and secrets beyond the reach of kings and inquisitors? No proof has ever been found, yet the allure is undeniable. The thought that the Templars may have stood on the shores of the New World centuries before the Age of Exploration is one of the most tantalizing mysteries of all.
As Jacques de Molay burned in 1314, he is said to have cried out one last curse, that both King Philip and Pope Clement would soon face God's judgment. Within a year, both men were dead. Chroniclers of the time recorded these events with awe, convinced the Grand Master's words had carried into the heavens. Thus was born the legend of the Templar curse. For centuries after, disasters and deaths were tied to the shadow of the Templars. Monarchs who persecuted them met untimely ends. Families who inherited their lands fell into ruin. Even nations that once betrayed the knights often suffered strange fates. Coincidence or divine retribution? The idea of a Templar curse became part of folklore, ensuring that the memory of the order was never simply historical. They were not only warriors, not only bankers, but avengers, guardians whose wrath reached beyond the grave.
One of the most controversial ideas linked to the Templars is the Bloodline Theory. Some believe that during their time in the Holy Land, the Templars discovered a secret, not of gold or relics, but of flesh and blood, a lineage. According to this theory, they found evidence that Jesus had descendants, a holy bloodline that the Church sought to hide. The Templars, bound by secrecy, may have become guardians of this revelation. Supporters point to cryptic symbols in Templar chapels, to carvings of roses and vines, and to their unusual reverence for Mary Magdalene. Could these have been subtle hints? If true, this secret would have threatened the very foundation of medieval Christianity, giving the Templars leverage over kings and popes alike. Whether fact or fiction, the Bloodline Theory has inspired countless books, films, and conspiracies, ensuring the Templars' mystery endures into modern times.
Another legend claims the Templars unearthed the Ark of the Covenant, the sacred chest said to hold the tablets of the Ten Commandments. Buried beneath the ruins of Solomon's Temple, it would have been the ultimate relic, a direct link to divine power. Some traditions suggest the Templars carried it away, hiding it in secret locations, from Ethiopia to France to even the British Isles. Churches built by the Templars often contain strange architectural features, sealed chambers, hidden passageways, and symbols that some believe point to the Ark's presence. The Ethiopian church in Aksum, which claims to possess the Ark, has also been tied to Templar intrigue with whispers that they once protected its journey. Whether they ever possessed it remains unknown, but the idea that a band of warrior monks once carried God's own relic across continents is a legend too powerful to ignore.
Not all treasure is gold. Some believe the Templars were guardians of ancient knowledge, astronomy, sacred geometry, and secrets inherited from civilizations long past. Their commanderies and churches often align with celestial events, their round chapels echoing the architecture of the Holy Sepulchre and even older traditions. Maps linked to the Templars suggest they possessed an understanding of navigation centuries ahead of their time. Their symbols often intertwine with esoteric patterns, suggesting they preserved wisdom from the East,
perhaps even from the mystics and scholars of Islam who were far more advanced in mathematics and astronomy. If true, the Templars were not just warriors or bankers, but keepers of knowledge, a bridge between civilizations, carrying forward secrets that would later ignite the Renaissance and the Age of Discovery.
Across Europe, Templar chapels still stand, many crumbling, many altered, but some hiding secrets in plain sight. In Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland, carvings depict plants from the New World, long before Columbus. In Tomar, Portugal, their convent hides spiral staircases, strange frescoes, and geometric patterns that defy explanation. These chapels were not mere places of worship. They were coded books in stone, filled with symbols only initiates could read. Some researchers believe they map constellations, others that they contain directions to hidden relics. Walking inside a Templar chapel is like stepping into a puzzle left behind by men who knew their order would fall, but wanted their legacy encrypted into walls that would outlast empires.
Centuries after their destruction, the Templars remain alive in myth. Secret societies claim to descend from them. Writers and filmmakers turn them into guardians of lost treasures, conspirators in shadowy plots, or seekers of forbidden truths. Their red cross has become one of the most enduring symbols of mystery. But why? Perhaps because the Templars sit at the crossroads of history and legend. They were real, knights, warriors, bankers, martyrs, and yet their story leaves so many unanswered questions. What did they find in Jerusalem? What treasures did they hide? What secrets did they die protecting? The absence of answers is what keeps them alive. The Templars were not just a medieval order. They are a mirror of our own imagination, reflecting our hunger for mystery, our fear of power, and our hope that somewhere a hidden truth still waits to be revealed.
One of the most enigmatic relics in Christendom is the Shroud of Turin, a linen cloth bearing the faint image of a crucified man. Though officially dated later, some theories claim the Templars possessed this relic long before it surfaced in the 14th century. During their years in Jerusalem, they may have discovered it hidden in Eastern vaults, carrying it back to Europe in secret. Interestingly, records of Templar trials mention a mysterious head or cloth venerated in ceremonies. Could this have been the Shroud, mistaken for an idol by hostile interrogators? Some historians believe the Shroud only entered European circulation through Templar networks, later gifted or transferred after their suppression. If true, this would tie the Knights not just to financial and military power, but to one of the most sacred relics of all time. Whether real or myth, the association endures, another layer in the tapestry of mystery surrounding the Temple Knights.
In southern France, the Cathars, a Christian sect deemed heretical by Rome, were brutally exterminated in the early 13th century. Yet some researchers argue that the Templars and the Cathars shared hidden connections. Both groups were accused of secret doctrines, of revering forbidden knowledge, of challenging the Church's monopoly on truth. Legends claim the Cathars held a great treasure in their stronghold at Montségur. When the fortress fell in 1244, 4 knights supposedly escaped with it under cover of night. Some say this treasure later surfaced in Templar hands, joining their already immense wealth and mystery. Others believe it was not gold, but knowledge, perhaps even linked to the Grail itself. The destruction of the Cathars and the fall of the Templars were separated by only a few decades. Some wonder if both were victims of the same force, the fear of hidden truths that threatened the power of Rome.
In 1314, the very year Jacques de Molay was executed, Scotland fought for its independence at the Battle of Bannockburn. Robert the Bruce, excommunicated by the Pope, faced overwhelming English forces, yet legends claim that on the eve of battle, mysterious knights appeared,
warriors clad in white mantles, bearing no banners, fighting with ferocity. Their arrival turned the tide, granting Bruce his decisive victory. Were these knights fugitive Templars, escaped from persecution in France and given refuge in Scotland? The story endures in Scottish lore, with some suggesting the Templars found a new life under Bruce's protection. Their knowledge, wealth, and power may have seeded the roots of later secret societies, hidden within Scotland's rugged hills. Whether fact or legend, the image of Templars riding once more into battle, even after their order was condemned, remains one of the most dramatic mysteries of their survival.
Centuries later, the mystique of the Templars reached even into the darkest chapters of modern history. During the Third Reich, Nazi leaders such as Heinrich Himmler became obsessed with medieval orders, relics, and secret knowledge. Himmler modeled the SS partly on the Templars, adopting black uniforms, strict rituals, and a sense of sacred mission. The Nazis searched across Europe for relics long tied to the Templars, from the Holy Grail to the Spear of Destiny. At Wewelsburg Castle, Himmler envisioned a new Camelot, a spiritual headquarters for a knightly order that would echo the Templars' blend of war and mysticism. Though twisted by ideology, this obsession shows how deep the Templar myth runs, powerful enough to inspire even in modern times, though for dark ends.
Today, the Templars are everywhere, in novels, films, video games, and conspiracy theories. From Indiana Jones to Assassin's Creed, their image has become shorthand for hidden power, lost treasure, and forbidden secrets. Their stories retold endlessly, shifting between history and myth, fact and fantasy. Why? Because the Templars embody a paradox. Real men who lived and fought, but whose legacy is a blank canvas. We know enough to be fascinated, but not enough to be certain. That gap between truth and mystery invites endless imagination. Every generation reshapes the Templars into what they most fear or desire: protectors of Christ, guardians of the Grail, architects of secret societies, or symbols of betrayal and downfall. In the end, the Knights Templar are not just history, they are legend, and legends, unlike orders, never die.
After the fall of the Templars, whispers grew that their lineage survived in secret. Across centuries, brotherhoods arose: the Rosicrucians, the Freemasons, the Illuminati, each cloaked in mystery, each accused of carrying forward the hidden wisdom of the Temple. Were these new orders inspired by the Templars, or were they their true descendants? Masonic rituals, for example, often echo Templar traditions. Sacred oaths, symbolic deaths and rebirths, even the veneration of Solomon's Temple. In some lodges, members are knighted into Templar degrees, keeping alive the Red Cross and sword. Skeptics call this symbolic revival, a way of borrowing prestige. Believers insist it is a direct continuation, proof that the Templars never died, only adapted. Whether imitation or inheritance, the connection between Templars and secret societies has become inseparable. To join such a brotherhood is, in some sense, to step into the shadow of the knights who once ruled Christendom.
Few names provoke as much intrigue as the Illuminati. Founded in the 18th century, they were said to be seekers of reason, knowledge, and hidden power. Almost immediately, they were linked to the Templars. Why? Because both orders were accused of the same things: secret rituals, hidden treasures, and dangerous knowledge that threatened kings and popes. Some conspiracy theories suggest that the Illuminati inherited the Templars' forbidden wisdom, astronomy, secret geometry, even lost relics of Jerusalem.
Others claim they shared not relics, but methods, secrecy, coded symbols, networks of influence across nations. In this sense, the Templars were the blueprint, the first great Illuminati, centuries before the word was spoken. Though historians dismiss these links as fantasy, the idea is seductive. To imagine the Red Cross fading into the all-seeing eye, the Knights of the Temple reborn as the masters of hidden power, is a narrative too powerful to resist.
To this day, treasure hunters scour the earth for the lost wealth of the Templars. Oak Island in Nova Scotia, Rennes-le-Château in France, Roslin Chapel in Scotland, all have been tied to buried vaults, golden hoards, or scrolls hidden away for centuries. Each generation rediscovers the mystery, each expedition chasing the same question: what did the Templars hide and where? Some believe the treasure is physical, gold, silver, relics. Others believe it is knowledge, maps of the New World, sacred texts, or even proofs of hidden truths. The real treasure may not be found in stone chests, but in the secrets that would change how we see history itself. And yet the most haunting thought is this: perhaps the treasure was never lost at all. Perhaps it remains guarded, protected, passed down quietly through the centuries by those who still wear the mantle in silence.
For 7 centuries, the Templars have remained alive in rumor. From Portugal to Scotland, from dusty archives to internet forums, their name resurfaces again and again. Modern groups even claim to be their heirs, performing ceremonies, wearing white mantles, swearing oaths to continue the ancient mission. Are these revivals genuine continuations, or only echoes of a legend too powerful to let go? Some say the true Templars never vanished, that a hidden line of Grand Masters still exists, guiding events from the shadows. Others dismiss this as fantasy, pointing out that history leaves no proof. But proof may not matter. What matters is belief, and belief has kept the Templars alive far longer than swords or papal decrees ever could.
In the end, the story of the Knights Templar is not one of simple rise and fall. It is a story of power, betrayal, secrecy, and myth. They were warriors who became bankers, monks who became legends. They guarded pilgrims, but also guarded secrets. They were destroyed by kings, yet resurrected in imagination. Their history ended in fire, but their legend burns brighter than ever. Perhaps the greatest truth is this: the Templars live on because they embody what we fear and desire most: hidden knowledge, forbidden power, the promise of a truth that lies just beyond reach. And so long as we hunger for mystery, the Red Cross will never fade. The Knights Templar will ride forever, not on battlefields, but in the imagination of mankind.